And so they struggle with the whole leadership component.
And I love the fact that you really encourage lay leadership, because I find this as well, that a lot of people sit in the pews every week, but they never develop their giftings because they don't have a chance to practice. And you never get to be a good prayer person, you never get to be a good preacher, teacher, minister, leader, anything, but unless you do it, and not everyone's going to go to seminary. So why is that something you encourage?
Well, I mean, one of our studies showed that in the U.S. at least, and it's probably the same or even worse here in Canada, is that 3/4 of all people who regularly attend church have no idea what their spiritual gifts are. Now, how are you going to use and upgrade and enhance your gifts if you don't even know what they are? What's going to happen is you become a quote-unquote volunteer because you've got a good heart, you've been told you should serve, you think, yeah, that'd be a good thing to do. So you show up at church, I'm here, put me in the game, coach. And they don't know what position you play. They don't know your gift.
And you don't know either.
And you don't know, you can't guide them any more than they can guide you. And so you're a warm body that's sent out onto the field to play a position. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll shift you another position. And you just keep getting shifted around. And, you're like a casualty of ministry. But again, it goes back to key leadership. When you have leaders in place, they understand, I've got to use my resources effectively and efficiently. People are my greatest resource, that I need to know what they bring to the table. And when they flourish, we flourish. That's the only way it works. The only great leadership is always team-based leadership. I never find an organization, whether it's a business, a ministry, a government agency, a nonprofit organization, where there's a solo individual who's leading the place, doesn't need anybody else, doesn't involve anybody else. It's him or her at the top. Everybody else just takes their commands from that individual. That doesn't work. It can't work. There are 4 different types of leaders. You've got to have all 4 working together for it to be ultimately effective.
So what do churches need to be doing differently then to correct that?
Well, do you have any
fix it
simple
for
questions?
me, George. Come on.
Oh, man. One of the things that churches certainly could do better would be to break down what they're doing. We have this fascination with and this love for bigness. Bigness kills us. It kills us. This whole mentality of the mega church, there are some wonderful large churches and they do great things. I'm not disparaging that. But when you begin to look at everything that's going on in each individual's lives in those churches, when we go in and we do a congregational study and we look at the individuals and what they're experiencing and not experiencing, one of the tragedies is that we treat everybody as if they're the same. Come in, sit down, we'll give everybody the same lecture, then go to this room, everybody of the same age, you'll get the same experience there, now go home and make use of it. Excuse me? Well, if you've got a church of 1,000 people, you have 1,000 unique individuals with different stories, experiences, needs, hurts, challenges, fears, doubts. You cannot say there's a one-size-fits-all approach in ministry that's going to minister to all 1,000 of these unique individuals.
But it's like school, right? You can't teach something that's individual for everyone in the classroom. So what do you do?
Why not?
Well, you need one person to disciple each person.
Now, let's go back to the New Testament and look at what happened there. Okay, Jesus took 13 idiots and he spent 3 years pouring his life into them, right? And then those idiots went out and they were no longer idiots. Suddenly the light bulb went on because they'd had a great mentor. They had somebody who got it, somebody who loved them, somebody who was devoted to them, somebody who would do whatever it took to help them to get it. And they eventually got it. And so they then went out and they started bringing in other people. Paul, everywhere he went, he had someone he was mentoring. Peter, James, you name it, all the guys were doing that. And so to me, the whole idea is, ministry is not a mass production opportunity. It's an individual kind of give and take, where when I understand what you're struggling with, I tailor what I need to go through with you, what I need to share with you, what I need to teach you, what I need to evaluate in your life, what we need to go and look for, so that you get what you need.
So is it a cell group setup that would work better? Is that what you're advocating?
That's part of it, possibly. But, there's so many issues here. One of the movements that we see happening in the U.S. is the house church movement, where that's been growing by leaps and bounds in the last decade or so. It's huge in other countries around the world. Why? Because when done properly, it works great. because it's not about stuff that doesn't matter. It's about what does matter. It's only about the people and about them getting close to Christ. It's not about the buildings, not about the positions, not about all the rest. So, yeah, you know, cell groups, I mean, we tend to get a little institutionalized even with those, and that scares me because we've seen that that can backfire. But yeah, the more personal, the more customized you can make the ministry, the more effective it's going to be.
And I think, you know, house churches work because we really do live in a postmodern culture in a sense, and there's that longing for authenticity, there's that longing for community, and it fulfills all that. You know, a lot of people in the faith think postmodernity is evil. Do you think it's evil?
You know, there are some things in postmodernism that do conflict with the way that Christ would have done things. But there are things in postmodernism that, frankly, are a lot healthier than much of what we do in the typical conventional church. You know, among the hallmarks of postmodernism are giving people meaningful experiences. Shouldn't the church be doing that? You know, one of the hallmarks of you know, postmodernism is enabling people to have intimate and meaningful relationships. Isn't that what the church is supposed to be? So
we should excel at it, really, in a sense.
We should be showing the way. Yeah, but people are gravitating to some of these other philosophies of life because the church has failed at part of its central calling.
Another thing that people are gravitating to is faith and spirituality as opposed to Christ. Why is that happening? Have we turned people off, or is it just the whole postmodern mindset of, you know, don't ask me to adhere to a certain set of truth that doesn't change?
Well, again, there are many different influences in our lives. You look at the primary influences, media. You know, we did a big study on what influences people to think and do what they do. And what we found is that the 7 dominant influences are movies, television, books, the internet, and music. 5 media. And it's the messages that come through those that permeate our minds and our hearts and shape the way that we think and we do what we believe is right. So it also shapes our behavior. Now, the other 2 were family and public policy. Now let's go back and look at, you know, are those 7 pushing people toward an understanding of and a love for and a desire to follow and emulate Christ? Thank you for playing, no way. You know, I mean, you look at what comes out in most media and it's really the other extreme of trying to challenge what the Christian life is about. You look at families and we know that the typical church family has almost no spiritual life together. You know, they may pile in the car and come to a church building together, but even there on the campus, usually they wind up scattering into their different age groups and events. But in the home, where they spend most of the time, where they have their most intimate times together, faith is an essential part of that. Public policy. You know, I can't speak for Canada, but I know in the United States there's like a cleansing going on where we don't want anything, any vestiges of faith to be in any of our rules or laws. Because somehow we think that's a bad thing. Excuse me, the country was founded on those very things. That's what made it a country that was able to last through incredible, difficult times for more than 225 years. So we've just got this errant idea about what it takes to really facilitate and live the Christian life.
You're quoted by many pastors and ministries and leaders, and one of your most famous quotes I always hear is that most people accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior and convert to Christianity before the age of 13. And yet you still see so many churches and ministries putting all of their budget into adults. Is that frustrating for you to watch?
That's one of the most frustrating things in my life. You know, 2 of the books that I've written address that very issue for that purpose. You know, what we typically find is that ministry to adults is kind of a maintenance ministry. And that's okay. That doesn't mean get rid of it. It just means let's be realistic about what we're trying to achieve and what we're likely to achieve. The Holy Spirit can do anything with anybody at any time and any place, no question about that. But when we look at the averages, we look at the trend lines, we project what's going to happen, and we see over time that playing out, it does cause us to say, you know what, we ought to consider shifting our resource base from those areas of maintenance to those areas where we could literally change the world within a generation. Nothing will happen overnight, but within a generation, if we heavily invested in ministering to children and preparing them for the kind of world they're going to face, it would really change the world in ways that none of us have seen in our lifetime.
Well, I could ask you another 50 questions and pick your brain for a few more hours, but I think I better let you go for now. But thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
No, I appreciate you doing that. Thanks.